Digitel is one of the leading companies helping associations leverage their content through event live streaming, webinars, and knowledge distribution. Take advantage of their 32 years of streaming success in generating revenue for their clients than any other company, hands down. For more information on Digitel, go to digitelinc.com.
Are you a follower? Okay, so we're gonna call the ad.
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Executive Editor Beth Kormanik.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to GatherGeeks. Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. How are you doing today?
Terrific. Thank you. Today's GatherGeeks features a conversation that you had with Nick Borelli of Borelli Strategies, which provides consulting and marketing for events and event companies. And after listening to this conversation, this is Influencer 101 for events. And, our listeners are going to get lots of tips for identifying influencers who can get people to come to events and how to handle them, and vetting your influencers, things like, who's followed by bots and who's followed by real people, and how much to pay your influencers, and the gambles that you take when hiring them. And, David, we've heard about influencers for big brands, supermodels like Kim Kardashian or Kendall Jenner, who actually was an ambassador for the now infamous Fyre Festival. But this is a game that conference planners can get into as well, right?
Yeah, no, it's really, everyone has an ecosystem. And who people listen to in that ecosystem is a science too. And if you tap into the right people, you can get other people to attend your event. Exactly.
But, not everybody's dipped their toe into the water.
No.
So I think
these are some sort of fundamental things. I met Nick at Cater Source in New Orleans, and he's the most wired person I met there, I think. He was part of everything, which I think is good. Curiosity, he had his finger on the pulse, I felt, and I thought it would be a good talk to inspire people about doing this on their own events.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, without further ado, let's take a listen.
So, Nick, you have had a long experience in the internet, and you've watched behaviors.
Yes.
You've had conversations back in the day when the internet was just being born about music and movies and having sort of little interest groups. And you really have become an expert in understanding the behavior around how people talk about things and how ideas flow. So today, talk about what you're doing in the world of events and influencers and how you think, and ambassador programs, and what your theory is of how an event organizer can really make the most of these new tools.
Sure. Bottom line is that people do business with people that they trust, and it's difficult to do business with a brand that is simply just a faceless brand. The trust level now is so low, specifically because marketers ruin everything. You give us an opportunity to automate and to spam and to do all that stuff, and by our innate nature, we're going to do that because we have to use every opportunity we can. And it's created an environment for bad marketers to very much dominate the landscape and really create a fatigue for people. So people want to take in human recommendations.
So when you say brand, let me interrupt you a minute. When you say brand,
sure.
And I hope you don't mind if I interrupt you, that when you say brand, you're thinking also of a conference or an event type, sure. Or things like that.
Very much
so when
like a content marketing world, for instance,
right.
If you're familiar with that one.
Yes, I think they're brilliant.
Yeah. So that's a great, and obviously that one is a marketing conference, so it's going to be in a way that is probably more progressive than a traditional conference around a different topic. Joe, who's the founder, is a very, very valuable resource there. And it's not just this orange logo and the name, but it's so much from about, and even though he's sold it, he's still very much out in the forefront. And you can really get in his head and make it personal. But also, there's a lot of people around that event, specifically the stakeholders and the presenters, who they leverage throughout the year to talk to different types of people at different levels to be able to want them to, or, invoke the need to buy a ticket.
The bottom line is that we're talking about how event organizers can add more personality to their events and their brands,
trust,
to bring people, and trust, to bring people to have a higher level of emotion for that brand or that conference or that event. using this new tactic of influencers and ambassadors, right?
Yeah, and the other aspect of it is that it becomes much more powerful when you determine who the personas or avatars of your event are. So I'll give you an example. If your event if it's a conference, for instance, because that's the world I'm in often, you have your jaded veteran event professionals who've seen it all, done it all, right? And the things that turn them on are very different than someone who is year one into into any industry, who need to know everything, but they need a place to start. Let's just start with those two groups. Two different personas. You would market at them very differently. You don't want to talk about 101 content to those veterans. On the other hand, you don't want to scare away new people. So you determine, okay, who's a credible voice for one group and who's a credible voice for the other group. It turns out maybe a celebrity type person within this niche community might be someone as a name that resonates more so with the people who are just new to the industry, but they know that person. You know, if it's a culinary thing, it's a celebrity chef. If it's an event industry thing, maybe it's somebody with a great book, or even marketing. It works like that. It's like a Gary Vee, for instance, is applicable to almost anyone who has, even dipped their toe into marketing. And then you look at the jaded person who's been around forever, and you say, okay, there's probably some more insidery person that people trust. And if you bring someone into the fold and say, not only do we want to leverage the platforms that you have, like on social media, email, website, et cetera, and kind of co-brand your brand with ours, but we also want you to affect this product roadmap potentially as far as the event itself.
Let's break it down a little bit in baby talk. Yep. Not really baby talk, but so I'm doing an event, and yes, you're coming in and you're consulting with me on the event, and you want to get more people to buy tickets and be part of it. Am I going to say, here's my event, I need to get 10 people that fit in this role to hit these personas for them to buy tickets? Is that what you're saying? In some form, in some sort of simplified way? Basically, yeah. You want to identify the 10 major reasons that people, or the different types of people and the major reasons that people would buy a ticket to this event. And then you need to find 10 people who those groups would most likely trust. And then you need to be able to create a program that, compensates them in some transparent capacity that makes them want to do this for you. And basically, you're buying the credibility of those people, and you're buying their reach. Okay, so let's take that. Okay, here's the 10 people. What is that transactional benefit to both sides? Now, I will say this. It absolutely depends on the assets you have and how far you want to go and how attainable those people are, right? So I've done ones that are small enough. Look, we need these 10 people to basically get us 10 more people or 20 more people or 30, where it's really pretty simple. And it's like, here's a free ticket. And it's just, if you meet this qualification, here's a unique link that's yours, and it's affiliate program essentially, and it's pretty simple. That's a pretty standard way of doing it, and it's kind of the way you do benefits too. Table captains. Totally. I mean, it's kind of using that sort of old school approach. Live off that. They live off that network approach and that kind of affiliate approach. But for conferences, it's kind of a new game, right? It is, and because it's a larger level, so you want to be able to say, okay, these are people who have built up, potentially years and years of credibility within this group. So if there's 5 or 6 different types of industries that would converge on this one event, then you'd want to be able to have someone, like I saw one that was about public speaking, and it was about presentations that were theatrical in nature. A public speaker might come to this. There might be a different groups of types of public speakers, but there also might be people that give presentations to close deals that would be a different type of group, right? So maybe you go for a sales guru, those types of people would respect, et cetera. So you just determine who's coming to the show, who would they respect, and then how do you bring them in the fold based on the amount of, either money or assets that you have that you could make a trade with. But the first step from sort of, you do this on a logical basis, is to create the personas of the different tribes that you're trying to attract. Right. Exactly that. And then the next step is to identify the tribe leaders who would be potential people that would influence the people that would come. And then I guess the third step is to figure out how do you recruit them and what a compensation level is. And I guess a fourth step is how do you activate them to make their job easier so they're not just doing all the heavy lifting for you, right? And they won't, right? I mean, it depends. The more powerful they are, the less work they'll do for you. So what you do is you create assets for them, you create copy for them, content for them, and you obviously give them, it's smart to give them the leeway to alter it within a specific scope
if they want to, but some of them just push it out, so here's 10 tweets that you could do, suggested tweets. Here's some images that you could create. You could have a banner across your Facebook profile, which I did recently as an ambassador of a conference, that had the logo, underneath my avatar. Here's a Facebook cover. Here's, an email content you can do, etc. And the other part of it is that you have to track them. But determining who these tribe leaders are, it depends on how small or how big your goals are. If they're smaller, it's not that hard. If it's larger, then you have to do some real auditing, and that's where it becomes a little bit of alchemy, which I will tell you, just yesterday, I stumbled onto something called Ghost Babble, which for $99 allows you to look at someone's Instagram followers. This is pretty tactical, but it allows you to determine how many of their followers are fake. Because other people are understanding that this influencer game is out there and potentially lucrative, and they're bumping their numbers up with fake engagement. Yeah, so you have to look at this as an investment in people, and you can audit this through, again, tracking links and all the affiliate things that you would normally do. But it's a gamble, and it's risky also to some extent, because you're co-branding with someone who's not in your organization. But the benefit is you're paying them as if they're not, you're not giving them a salary. Right?
But what is the compensation? Like, you're an influencer in a certain market. What is the easy stuff is the free people that will do it for recognition. When you really get into it transactional and get more sophisticated, what are you paying these people?
Yeah.
And how are you paying them?
Sure. Most of the time, if they're really, really untouchable, and that there's basically even the Midas touch, anything they touch turns to gold, and you have potentially some case studies, or if they've been in the influencer game, they actually potentially have a deck on some case studies. Then it's a gamble, and you just pay them either the amount they ask for, or
what do they ask? What do they? I mean, what kind of dollars?
It's been a range. Yeah, it's been a huge range. It's generally, I haven't seen anybody that's not in at least, again, I do events sometimes that have 200-300 people that are not at least in the $1,000 game, right? But it's a lot of ticket stuff and access things I've seen as well. But as much as 10,000-20,000, it just depends on the scale.
Right. But I mean, you can do a lot of smaller ones just to attend the event, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I see the most frequently are simply, so you had Alex on your show, correct?
Yes, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's a friend of mine. We talk all the time. So Alex was at an event recently, Inbound, a marketing conference, and they identified at the event, and this is a key way to do this as well, because there's lots of metrics at events to determine who's really, the tribe leader and who people resonate with. Well, they determined that right there and then he was tweeting the most. He had a lot of engagement. Let's give him tickets to next year, and let's give him like an Alexa and some other stuff. And they rewarded him on site. And he's obviously going next year. He posted about it. I know about it. I didn't necessarily have somebody in my world that went to Inbound frequently. Now I'm thinking about it. It works. In the circle that he's in, that I'm in as well. So it can be simply just reward people at the event who are tweeting the most or posting the most pictures with tickets to next year. Because if you want them to do that again, it's there.
What is the difference, though, between a social media influencer and an ambassador that may not be social but has influence in the marketplace? Those are two different types, right?
Yeah,
or could they be the same?
So they could be the same. I'll give you an example. The show that we were both at recently, I was an ambassador of a cater source. There's about 10 different types, 10 different ambassadors, and one of them has been, for instance, I'm thinking of in my head, had been around, 40 years in the catering community. I was the only non-caterer, by the way, that was an ambassador there. And she was there for wayfinding, because everyone knows her face and they see her and they can make people feel good about being there. And it was less about, in that instance, it was less about getting people there in the door. For me, they didn't really care if I did that. All they cared about is that I posted about it a lot and I talked about it online, because I'm more of a social media influencer. So it depends. They had emails out, and they used the ambassadors there in the emails and said, these people will be there. Here's their stories. Here's their quotes. And then they had other people that said, look, we just want your channels. And basically, here's how many times you want to tweet about this, how many times you want to blog about this, etc.
At what point, and we talked a little bit about this when we were in New Orleans at CaterSource, Where is the ethics of this going?
Sure.
I'm in a business where we have an editorial team and we have a very strict church and state policy. And you're seeing companies that you don't really know who are the influencers that are being paid and who are the ones that are really telling the truth. Not necessarily that they're not telling the truth, but is there a transparency piece going on here that needs to be more
There's
objective?
a legal transparency piece.
Tell us that,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, the FCC has been, and as this has become really stock and trade in how the fashion industry is moving product right now, that's one example of, if you look at a Kim Kardashian or a Kanye West, people ask all the time, what do they even do for a living? And the answer is, really, they're just influencers. They're paid influencers at different levels. Sometimes they're given percentage and stakeholder in the operations that they have. They're owners of that. But the bottom line is they're influencers. And when Kim Kardashian takes a picture in the mirror, a selfie mirror on Instagram, the clothes she's wearing, there was somebody that gave her money to do that, which is a thing in that industry that is a little bit more obvious. And Nike does that quite a bit as well in regional ambassadors that they have. But the bottom line is the legality comes in. First off, it's not black and white, but you have to be able to call it out in some capacity, or be able to point to the fact that you told people that you are working for them. So there's in Twitter, for instance, there's a convention that sometimes you'll see where people will say #ad. I know that Ken Bone had to do that because in his 15 minutes of fame, he wore this red sweater, and I think Izod or some other company like that, I believe it's them, contracted him within days to say talk about you got it from us and whatever. He tweeted and didn't write an ad, and the FCC actually contacted him because at the level he was at, it was for those 15 minutes, it was a big deal. So my advice always is simply to be as transparent as possible. So I am a paid influencer myself, and I read a lot of strategies that have them. And my answer always is that state as often as you can, without it being beating people over the head, that you are on their team.
How many teams can you be on to be legit? I mean, I don't know if you want to say how many you are on, but you have
three.
You're on
now,
3
currently.
Is that a good number?
It just depends on your bandwidth. That's a good question. It depends on your bandwidth. The conflicts can't be there, right? So that's key. Obviously, you can't have the same industry, or what's the point?
Right.
My line in my sand that I currently have, because I'll be honest, in every transaction that you do like this, you are trading on your credibility for money.
Right.
And that's it. You're giving part of your credibility away for money. And that's a real thing. And no matter what you're doing, no matter how great the product is, how much you believe in it, you're still doing that.
Right.
So you have to be aware of that, and you have to be cautious of that if you're in this for a long game. So my line in the sand is, if I can't affect your product roadmap, or if I can't affect how this event is going to take place, I don't actually want to be an influencer, because I am paid and my brand is about consulting. But I will tell you that the consulting brands that I work for, they don't care about my influence. They just want my brain. I still talk about them anyway.
Right, because you're human.
Yeah, of course. I like them, right? And so it's not just the old chestnut is we'll only talk about the things that you believe in. I mean, take that as a given. You also want to be able to say, are you really part of their team, or are you just a disposable asset? And you can make that decision, but just know when you're trading on your credibility that it's just that you're just you're Kim Kardashian wearing their clothes in a mirror.
But at what point are you pushed too hard as an influencer? You need to know how far you can go as well, and not get taken advantage of too. Just because someone's giving you money doesn't mean that they're entitled to everything.
I completely agree. So I have very, very detailed contracts with lots and lots of bullet points on the things that I will do. And if it's not on there, we can talk about it, but it's not as likely. So it's very granular in the things that I will do over time. As far as the influence aspect of what I do, the consulting aspect of what I do is that I have regular phone calls, and it's pretty straightforward.
What are the things that, if you're asked to be an ambassador or an influencer, what shouldn't you do? What's a big no-no?
Well, I mean, obviously, you don't want to get in anything if you don't know their reputation, if they're coming out of nowhere, and because that actually happens quite a bit. Because I don't know how familiar everyone is with the term growth hacking, but it's very popular in the tech circle, and it's becoming something that event organizers are looking at more frequently, because they basically they need to move things quickly.
Explain growth hacking to the event community.
Yeah. Okay. So it is moves that you make for short-term boosts in either sales, or I guess let's just say sales. So if you're an event organizer, there are people out there who specialize in quote unquote growth hacking, and they will do moves that aren't long-term investment moves in your community, but instead short-term growth moves. I'm trying to think of a good example would be to, it's a lot of like anyone who signs up for this also gets email blasted. So you'd have your sponsors, each one of them, you'd buy their list and you'd do an email blast. And it would be a little aggressive, and it would be a little, I don't know.
Gray hat.
Yeah, it's gray at best. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, but are you seeing, though, this ambassador influencer program does move the needle for events and conferences?
Yeah, because I have personally in experiences that I've had, with strategies for it, simply because it's measurable, which is key. So you don't have to put a ton of assets into it. So again, I've done the ones where if you have 10 people that bring 20 people, and you look at the investment on the percentage of that, and it's nominal, those people you would not have got otherwise, because they just wouldn't have been responsive to those groups.
Are there programs that help an organizer manage the influencer programs?
That's a great question. Not soup to nuts. You'd want to look at potentially like a HubSpot or something like that to identify who is talking and who is leading conversations to determine who these tribe leaders are. That's key. I mean, to be able to determine who these people are to some people it's alchemy. To some people it's very easy. If they know their audience very well.
On the registration side, is there anyone that's cracked the code on giving credit for the influencer program, that there is an ambassador program, so that your code is in the registration and people know that it's coming from you? I'm sure that there's ways of doing it, of hacking that into things.
Sure. So I like, for instance, like a BizBash, for instance, I know has a lot of different keys that work well with affiliate programs, or whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah, basically it's an affiliate program.
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways that you can use affiliate programs to determine where the source came from.
Right.
And if it's done in a digital capacity, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we always do. We give codes out for different things, but it's a little bit not so seamless anymore. And I noticed that there's also a lot of influencer markets where you can actually find influencers. I forgot the names of the actual websites.
Oh well, there's lots of those.
What are some of those? What are some of those to give people a sense?
I've never used one.
Yeah, no, there really is a marketplace.
I look at the price, and I'm like, my ability to look at the social chatter and be able to determine that is actually pretty easy for me.
Do you think though that the trust factor of this is going to be put in question because it's going to be used too much? What's the tipping point for? I mean, should you be on this now, or is it already too late?
It is definitely not too late. It's actually, for the event industry, we are way behind in this.
It's the secret sauce for us.
You spend $1,000 and you buy, and invest that in web ads, or I don't know, a commercial, or more than 1,000, or whatever, any of those mass market things. You're still in the world of impressions, but you still have to have 5 or 6 of those to convert. But if you have somebody that they already trust, they've already built up 4 or 5 of those. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
So you're buying those dots in between to that landing point. And like when I talk about how many points it takes to convert, those points aren't all equal. Yeah. A tweet from your brand is a weak point. An email is stronger. Them landing on your website is very strong. But them getting a personal referral from someone they trust is right up there with actually coming to your website.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting that this is, the understanding of the creating the personas too is an art form itself.
Very much so. You have to basically sit in their brains for a while, and you know what? It's actually easier to do than you think. As far as I'm a pop psychologist, so I like to get in the heads of people and do that. But I will tell you, if you want to do it in a way that's like pretty simple, all you have to do is you need to be able to have you look at your past attendees, and you need to send them surveys. And with those surveys, you can lead them into a bunch of different personas. It's changing. Like, for instance, I'm the International Marcom Chair for ILEA, and we have been creating over the last maybe 4 or 5 months, because this is what I do, personas for that. And the reasons that people join associations are extremely varied. But most associations chip at people as the same one. Like an MPI talks to the event organizer, the event organizer. But there's plenty of members that are obviously suppliers. They always play that ratio game. But nonetheless, when you start looking at these things, you start talking differently. You list segment and have emails that are different. And then if you have and landing pages that are different, and influencers are different, and all of a sudden you're having conversations when you know your audience a little better.
But the way you identify them, when I first started doing this, it was like you put standard groups together, but then you start thinking about it like high school. And who are the jocks and who are is that kind of the way you have to think about it?
I love that. Yeah. What does the goth kid want that the jock wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
I love it.
The journalism kids and the And I guess it's changed a lot since I've been in high school, but I think you got to look at it more broadly than, these are the
really good
meeting planners that are, but the meeting planners are divided into all different types of things. So you're really going to even a higher level of persona.
The more you know your audience, the better you can create content that suits what they need to make their lives better.
Okay, here's my one pet peeve, though. I believe that there's a huge difference, and I think that the world is seeing this, between content creation and journalism. And when we think about what we do, we think of it as journalism. Content is where influencers can be bought and things like that. And so
right.
I believe that there is a nuanced difference I'm calling you out on. Yeah, fake news and all that is giving, making us think about this more.
No, you hit it on the nail on the head there. I am a marketer, right? So for me, it's all content. It's the coldest word. It's one of the most disgusting words that exists in the human language, as far as my opinion, but it is what it is. Yeah. But you're right. There should be a clinical separation between those things, except I don't do anything that isn't manipulation.
That's why the world is in the condition that we're in, because I don't think that the journalists are standing up for journalism anymore. They forget. They think
that's why I said
content.
Marketers ruin everything. We ruin
absolutely
everything.
Well, also, that's why the people that create conferences also have to be, we call it living journalism now. And sometimes you don't know what is fake and what is real at the conference itself. And I think there's a new responsibility for people to really tell the truth at conferences, which is, there's a lot of gray there.
Well, you're right. And look, this influencer stuff, and even when you look at, uncompensated presenters, there's just a lot of issues when it comes to, presentations and education information that happens at events that are bad long term. That I think we're still, now that we have a real industry with people coming into it with expectations, I think we're going to be, there's going to be a real line in the sand between those people who are doing harm and those people who are making money off of people.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, this has been fantastic. How do people get in touch with you if they want to create their own influencer and ambassador program, or get your genius from a consulting point of view?
So I'm one of the easiest people to find online. So if you want to do a direct email to me, is nick@nickborelli.com, and then I am Nick Borelli at any social media and many that you've never heard of.
And you're everywhere. So I love talking to you. I think that this is really an interesting topic, and I hope our listeners get a lot out of what we talked about today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, David. That was really a fascinating conversation, and I think important for our listeners. What was interesting to me is that Nick thinks the event industry is way behind on adopting this strategy.
I think it is, because we're so busy worrying about the logistics and the event. We're not worrying about the strategic planning in advance. And I think that that's really what the future is really how do you think about this thing strategically?
Yet at the same time, you identified an old school method of doing this, the table captains for nonprofits. And so this is just kind of an updated, modernized version of that translated to the conference space.
What's old is new.
Yeah, there's a lot to be learned, absolutely, from the past. I found it fascinating, his tip, for influencers, you are really seeding all of this. You can create assets for them. You're writing the tweets, you're giving them the art, which, they can tweak within limits, but you really have to come up with a full package when you are choosing to market this way.
Yeah, you have to make it easy. The whole idea is to make it easy, because really, people don't want to do too much. They want to make it so that they can do what they know how to do and not worry about anything else.
Exactly. I hope our listeners come away with a lot of tips and strategies that they can use if they want to go.
Like they do every week on BizBash, right?
Absolutely.
What is going on at the old BizBash this week?
Yeah, we are so excited because our innovation issue is out. This is one of our most popular franchises and really puts the people who are blazing new trails in front of you. So you can find out which companies made our top 10 innovative brands list and meet the people who are changing the way we think about events. It's available as a digital magazine, and it's an interactive format designed specifically for the digital environment. So when we're describing, for instance, an augmented reality fashion show, you can click on it and see what that looks like yourself. So if you're a BizBash subscriber, this is coming to your inbox already. And if you are not, which you really should be, but if you're not, you can download the issue from our site, bizbash.com.
And you can subscribe to BizBash by going to bizbash.com, and there's a little button on that top piece that'll tell you to subscribe to our newsletters and have the keys to the kingdom.
It's just that easy. Yeah.
It's just that easy. And this digital magazine is so cool. I am so proud of our editorial team for the choices they made in choosing who's in there, because this is probably, we've done hundreds of these now. And also for this design and this new frontier of how people are presenting information is so amazing that I think we're going to be seeing this in the future, especially from event organizers when they have to present their own materials in such good and important ways.
Right. We're all designing for digital, whether it's our events or our editorial content. So it's worth spending some time with everyone out now. We'll see you next time, David.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter @GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. If you are looking for a state-of-the-art learning management system, take a look at Digitel's newest platform, OpusDX. OpusDX offers the robust platform for event organizers and associations to manage content. To learn more and schedule a demo, email them at contactus@digitelinc.com. That's contact us at digitellinc.com.